Test, test. That was a bit loud. I see that there's a few people watching the YouTube stream. You people from the meetup? Hey Chris, can you hear me? And can you see the screen alright? Okay, cool. When everything sounds alright. What's the lag like between the video? I'm waving now. I'll give people 1 more minute to join, and then I'll get started. Cool. Thanks, Chris. You can drop off the meetup if you want. Okay, cheers. Alright, I might get started going through this. So, tonight the idea of the talk was how can you launch a website for your business from your bed? Now, I've set up a lot of websites, and often it doesn't take too long. If you kind of know the ropes a bit, maybe it can take a weekend, but I'd say that you could do it comfortably yourself and from home. There are times where you might want to go and engage someone who is a professional at setting up websites if you want to get more technical on it. But hopefully tonight we get to cover the basics. Ultimately, this should be enough for you to get started, get your own website live, and then go from there. It's an open Q&A, so if you have any questions or you want to make a comment, please feel free. We have the YouTube live chat open, and we also have, if you're from the meetup, you also have access to a live voice chat, which is what my headphones are for at the moment. So there was a link that went out for the meetup, which will give you access to a Google Hangouts, a Google Meet, and you can ask questions on there on voice. And we're also presenting this presentation through that Hangout, if you just wanted to watch that. So we're going to talk today a little bit about web solutions and how they've changed over time. We're going to go and talk a little bit about how websites works to get those kind of fundamental understanding of how websites go together. We're then going to go through a few examples of setting up a website, the kind of process you would want to go through, and then given that this was going to be a live one, I was hoping to take some ideas from the audience and then kind of talk through some digital strategies there and kind of how I would approach it. But I've set up 3 examples and I'll walk through those. So if anyone has an example of their business and they want to maybe get some tips or some pointers on how to set up their web presence for themselves, feel free to reach out on the chat or on the voice chat, and we can use your example instead of the ones I've already prepared. I thought it'd be easier in front of a live audience, but that's okay. We'll work with what we have. So websites have changed quite a bit over the last, say, particularly the last 10 years. I mean, you're going back, if you go back about a decade, a lot of people were putting their websites together themselves. People were going and having to get acquainted with HTML, with CSS, with JavaScript, and having to kind of piece together it yourself. There were a few platforms out, but most of them back then required pretty hands-on technical expertise. Then you move to about 5 years ago, and by this time you kind of have some web platforms where you can go and build it yourself. Now, if you're a bit more technical, you can get quite a nice website out of them. The problem with these build-it-yourself web platforms was that you really had to know quite a bit about web development, about design, about user experience, how to put it all together. Nowadays, there are lots of platforms out there where you can instantly go online. So you can join up to a platform, enter your details. A lot of them will have prefabricated themes that you can use and just amend for your own business. I'd say that we're still in a transition phase and there's still a lot of work to be done. If you're going out and you're using an instant go live platform, what you'll likely find is that it's not really converting or kind of hitting those business goals that you really want to do, whether it's conversion, whether it's your organic traffic. it doesn't really drive your business at this point. It still takes a bit of work to actually hit those business goals, but it will get you online, it will get you a website, and most of the time it's good enough for brand searches. So if people are typing for your brand and you have an instant go live platform, usually it's enough so that it gives you the full functionality, so if people are looking for you, they can find you and they can kind of make those transactions that you're hoping they will on your website. The one area where I would say that it has a bit to go is particularly in digital strategy and how you actually engage customers to come through and convert. Whether your conversion is a sale, it's an inquiry, an inbound lead, it can be anything. It's really what your business is focused on. And we're going to talk a little bit about, firstly, how do I get online? How do I get that website? How do I get my information out there? And then with the examples, we're going to go into a bit more detail about, okay, you've got a website, but how do you optimize that? And how do you really shoot for your goals? And how do you optimize for those business goals? So the kind of things that you want to start with when you're thinking about your website, this is kind of the checklist. This is what I would use as a bit of a thinking point before you go and get started. Often lots of people would like to get started with a domain. That is, they have an idea for a business name or a website, they buy the domain, and you kind of start from there. I often start from the point of view of, okay, well, what do I actually want to do for my business? How do I want to operate this? What are the kind of customers that I want to get? But a domain seems to be quite a popular starting point, and a lot of people already have their domain. I have a lot of clients that will come to me and say, hey, look, I've got this domain, now I want to do something with it. So there's a lot of domain providers out there. My personal favorite is probably Namecheap. Namecheap are probably cheaper than most of them out there. They have enough add-on services so that if you want to add a bit more functionality there, you can. The next thing you want to think about is hosting. Where am I going to host it? What kind of hosting am I going to use? Now, this can be a little daunting, and some of the other questions, including the domain question, they can all kind of be rolled into one solution. But these are kind of those checklist items that you need to have. Software. Ultimately, you have a website which runs on some kind of software. That's what exists on the hosting. It's a piece of software that serves your website. The next thing, and sometimes this is the starting point for people, is they have an idea for their branding and design. So they may have an idea for what they want to do, how they want to present themselves, they may have even gone a mock-up, and then they want to use that as their starting point. I'd often say that starting with design, you're probably looking at a longer time frame, and you're going to probably spend a bit more money for someone to actually implement your custom design. My preferred approach, if I'm looking at launching a website from my bed, is I'm probably going to start with a prefabricated theme that really fits the kind of look and feel that I want, and then I'll customize from there. So starting with a theme that already exists can often save you quite a bit of time. Lastly, you want to look at your online digital marketing. So that is, now how are you going to get customers there? You don't create a website and then customers just turn up. It's usually the long game that you're in for, particularly if you've got a website. If you want that kind of quick turnaround, you're really going to have to be focused on digital marketing and how are you pulling those customers into your website. So let's start with what happens when you search for a website. What happens when you type in that website name either in Google or in your browser? So websites have a URL, and that URL usually points to an address on the internet. It's usually denoted by an IP address. So you can see here that we have janeslandscaping.com.au. So Janes Landscaping is the website, and that'll point to a server somewhere. This is called the host server, and the IP will usually be a number which is like 32-88-92-.92. And you'll find that this domain actually just acts as an alias. Right? It acts as an alias for this server. And when you type in this, or you go and you Google Janes Landscaping, and Google has to actually go and find where this website exists. Right? This host server will often run some kind of software. This software will serve your website, and the website will be passed back through the cloud or the internet back to the person that's requested it. This domain name system here is really just kind of the concept of having your website pointing to an IP address. Usually, getting the domain name is the easy part, and setting up this host is generally the part that takes a little bit of time. The process for buying a domain is pretty simple. You can go online. Most people have figured this part out already, but if you haven't, it's quite easy. Go online, say I want to buy a domain. There are a few websites that will come up. Like I've said, I like using Namecheap. They're generally quite cheap. You could use GoDaddy, you could use Crazy Domains. There's a lot of domain providers out there. Know that all domain providers will mostly sell you the same kind of domains, just at slightly different price points. So you can shop around and find the best price point. Most domain providers will be offering you the same domains. Once you have that domain name that exists, some of the providers will allow you to bypass this and just set up a kind of website which, oh, I've got a question. How does domain provider get the domain name? Oh, the domain provider gets the domain name. So when you register your domain name, the provider will register it and update global records that point it to an IP address. So in this screenshot, you can see that I've bought a domain, and what I actually have to do is I have to point it to a provider who will actually update those records. Sometimes your domain provider will do this for you automatically, but a lot of the time, if the person who is providing your domain is not also your host, then you will have to tell the domain provider that your host is elsewhere. And this is a pretty common occurrence. These things here are the DNS servers themselves. So the DNS servers themselves are those records that keep a table which on one side has an IP address and on the other side has your domain name, and whenever someone's searching for you, it goes and looks up on these servers, it finds the match, it gets your IP address, and then it knows where your website exists. This is kind of what those domain records look like. So anything that's going to this sydneyfitness.life website, which is a website that I've set up, or www.sydneyfitness.life will point to this, and this is actually a server. And this is the DNS records. So sometimes you'll have to set this up. Again, if your provider that you bought the domain off is actually providing the host for you, they might actually do this for you. Now, back in the day, you used to have to go and set up your own server. And this meant, actually, I'll still take one step back. What a server actually is, a server is a computer that's connected to the internet. And that's it. It has an IP address, and really it's the work of that server that when someone goes and says, hey, give me a web page, it has to send a page back to that user. Now, most of the web servers today run on Linux, which is an operating system. Not too dissimilar to Windows or OS X. It's more closely related to OS X, but previously this is something you would have to go and set up yourself. If you're looking to launch a website from your bed and you don't want to spend, say, 2 weeks in bed, I would generally avoid the DIY option. I would generally look at a hosting provider that provides a host itself. Otherwise, I'd be looking to pay a developer to set it up for me. Now really, this is the difference between a managed and a non-managed host. A managed host will actually provide you all these services by default. A non-managed host will make you set it up and configure it yourself. So if I was looking to get set up, then what I'd be looking for is a managed host. This is usually the quickest, but it might cost you a few extra dollars a month. But trust me, if you value your time, it's definitely worth it. Question in the chat around cloud. Yeah, so a cloud often just refers to the internet. It can also refer to services which are outsourced, which exist on the internet, but aren't your own computer. So it used to be that if you wanted to set up a website, say maybe 20 years ago, that you could actually use your home PC, and that would be considered to be not cloud. You're hosting it yourself at your home. The problem is, home internet is not that reliable. It's not enterprise grade internet, and your computer shouldn't be really running 24/7 all the time just to serve your website. You usually want it to use other things. So the idea of the cloud is that somebody else hosts it for you, and it's their job to maintain that computer and make sure it stays up all the time. Then you have to have some software. So having the host isn't just enough. You have to have some kind of software that serves back a web page. So when someone goes to your website and they want to see your home page, a request goes to the server, and the server says, this is the home page that you want to see, and it will send it back to the user. There's lots of different software that you can use. This screenshot I've got here is an earlier version of WordPress. WordPress is probably the most popular platform for building websites. It can be very handy, but it was originally designed mostly for blogs and writing articles. There are a wealth of plugins now that mean you can turn a WordPress blog into the kind of website that you're looking to build. We'll talk a little bit more about these software solutions later. We know that WordPress at this point is probably the most popular. Now, between buying a domain, setting up DNS, hosting, and software, you're probably thinking that there's already quite a lot to do. Know that there are providers out there that will actually give you this in an all-in-one solution. So if you're looking to launch a website from your bed in, say, 2 hours, you can go and find managed hosting of a WordPress site, and you can use that as your starting point. This is a screenshot of Wix. Now, Wix is a little easier to use than WordPress. It's really been designed from the ground up as a website rather than a blogging platform. There are a lot of configuration options, and most people will still opt to pay someone to set up their Wix site for them. There's a lot of little technical things, particularly if you want to be ranking highly in Google and other search engines. There's quite a bit of optimization to do, and there's quite a few options. You can sit down with a guide and you can go through this. It may take you a weekend or so. Then there are other solutions. We have an in-house solution that we call ApointB, and it's an engine that builds your website. And the way it works is you get the pages, you have the little edit icons next to any of the text, you can choose a template, and you can go in and just edit the text as you please. From there, adding different kind of functionality is quite easy. So with our in-house platform, what we've actually done is we've said we don't want the users to maintain plugins, to have to upgrade them, which is one of the downsides of WordPress, is that those plugins have to be maintained and you have to keep upgrading them. With ours, and with a few other of the solutions out there, really what you can do is you can go in and you can choose the kind of functionality you want to add without having to maintain anything. Once you kind of have your platform, you've got your domain and it's serving back a page. At this point, you won't have much. It'll probably be a pretty blank website. So at this stage, you're probably looking at, okay, well, what should my logo be? How do I get a design? How do I get images and videos? So there's a lot of free logo creators out there, and I would actually be looking for a free logo creator to get my first iteration of the logo out. You can get an idea for what you kind of go for, the colors, and if you want to enhance it at any point, you can go and get someone else to actually work on it and enhance something based off this original one. But if you're looking to get online quickly, you can use an online logo generator to kind of get the ball rolling. Design isn't that simple. It's an art in and of itself, and really what you want to be doing is hopefully going and finding templates that somebody else has built and optimized for. That way you're going to get the most bang for your buck. What is really important for most websites is having a CTA button. This is called a call to action button. When somebody lands on your site, most of the time, you want them to perform some action, whether that's making an inquiry, buying some kind of item, making a booking, making an appointment, downloading an ebook. Depending on what you want them to do, you really should start with your CTA button. Most designs will have CTAs built in, and they will be built with this in mind. I wouldn't try designing your own website from scratch, particularly if you don't have a lot of experience in design. The last thing for branding and design is you really want to look professional, right? You don't want an image that has all these kind of watermarks on them, right? Maybe they're not relevant. So there are free stock image websites out there. One is called Unsplash, another one is called Pexels. And with those websites, you can actually go and find some stock photos that look quite professional for free, that have use for commercial use, so you can put them on your website. If you're looking for even better photos, then you can look at paying between $10 and $20 for a really nice stock photo. Generally, the more you're paying, the better the rights you have to use that image, and usually the better the image is. When it comes to digital marketing, there's a few ways of going about it. You can do direct ads, where you run ads, people click on them, and they end up on your website. The other thing that you can do is you can go and start creating content. Now, content is a more longer term solution, and really what you're trying to do there is think, okay, what are my customers looking for in terms of information, and how do I answer their questions? 99% of the time, your customers aren't actually looking for your brand, and generally, if they're looking for your brand, they're going to find it. If they type in your brand name, you usually rank pretty highly for your own brand name, but most of the time your customers are actually looking to consume some kind of information. So if you can be their source of information, it means you're more front of mind, and you can actually try and convert them to an engaged customer as they're reading your content. When you're doing these paid campaigns, say you're running ads on LinkedIn or Facebook, then what you want to do is you want to break it down for specific goals. So you want to be thinking, okay, am I selling tickets to a particular event? And you want to turn that into its own campaign. If you're trying to get leads, you might go and do a LinkedIn InMail account where you can go and send people LinkedIn messages based on their job titles. So you want to be thinking at this point, for each different set of ads that I'm running, who is my target customer and how am I going to attract them? What kind of channels are they using, and what kind of text are they going to be responsive to? Now, getting organic traffic and ranking on the first pages of Google, usually you're going to be able to do that for your own brand, but what you want to be doing that for is for really popular search topics. Most people are looking to consume information, and you want to be ranking for that. Now, there could be a whole nother talk on SEO, which we'll probably do at some point, which will go through different kind of things that you can optimize. Just know at this point that doing a little bit of SEO research, which is search engine optimization, and figuring out some of those tips and tricks for ranking highly can always help. If you're looking for ideas for what to write about, think about what your customer would be Googling. Type that into Google and see what kind of results come up. Have a look at those first few results, and you want to kind of mimic what they're doing. If you scroll to the bottom of your Google page, what you will actually see are suggested results. Start going through those suggested results, and it will give you more and more tips on what you could be writing about. It'll often take a few months for your content to start ranking really well. It could take 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, depending on the kind of content, how competitive it is. If it's a really competitive keyword and you're competing with other really good content writers, then what you might find is that you might never rank on the first page. In which case, you really want to be focusing on those areas where people are not that competitive. Some people that I speak to, they want to jump in and they want to code it themselves. Now, if you have zero coding experience, I'd estimate that it's probably going to take you about a year to get your website up. Now, what that means, it means it's going to cost a lot, both in terms of money and in terms of time. If you're valuing your time and it's taking 12 months, really the cost is going to be over about $50,000. At some point, particularly if you've never done it before, I'd say that there's about a 2-year learning curve to be able to doing this from scratch. Unless, of course, using the frameworks or some of the builders that we've gone through. You can go and hire a developer. Usually I'd be recommending for this if you have a more complex or integrated website that you want to integrate with something else. Say you're a law firm and you have Leap, which is like a legal management software, and you want to connect to that. Things like that might generally cost you more, and you might have to hire a developer. It can get quite complicated, particularly when you're connecting few applications together back to your website. Website frameworks. If you're looking to get someone set you up on, say, a WordPress install, get you up and running, it's generally going to cost you about $2,000 to $5,000, and this is generally where I see most customers who are looking to get someone to build them a website. It can take between about 3 to 10 weeks, depending on how good your firm is and the kind of functionality that you want. The web builders and the web generators, this is the more DIY option. Web builders like Wix or Squarespace, it can take a few days to get up and going, and they're generally charging you a per monthly fee. Web generators, they're a little bit quicker, so they're mostly all of this out of the box. You sign up, you have a website, you start editing your content. So a lot of the time, people think what they need is based on just around a website. Say I'm looking to get more sales, more leads, more customers, I want to build an audience. A lot of the time people think that a website is the obvious solution. But really there's a lot of digital strategy here that goes into it, and a website on its own is not going to achieve these goals for you. Often it's going to take a combination of a few things. So here I've put in a few ideas. So if you're doing organic customers, usually you want really good search engine optimization, you'll want to be blogging a lot, and this is going to take a time. The search engine algorithms will take a while before they figure out, hey, this is a really good website with really good content, we should show it to people. So you have to be patient. If you want to speed up the process a bit, you can look at ads, a landing page, and analytics. So a landing page, if you don't want a full website and you're just trying to get some inbound leads, you can actually go and use a landing page tool, something like Lead Pages. MailChimp has some options as well, where you can actually just set up one single page and you set up some ads, and those ads go to that single page, and that single page tries to achieve that goal that you set. So if it's a sale of a product, if it's a download of an ebook, if it's collecting an email, if it's getting an appointment, that's what that landing page does. So it's single use, single goal page. Usually you'll then also want to run some analytics on it. What you can also do is then you can add retargeting. So retargeting is where someone comes to your web page, they go off it, they haven't made the purchase, but then you can go back through Facebook or Google and actually show them an ad a second time. If you want to build an audience, this can often take a while. A lot of people will jump on something like Facebook, try to create a page for their brand and try to build it up and build up an audience. What can often be more successful is actually going off-brand if you're setting up social pages. So you might set up a Facebook page for legal tips in a particular area. Right? That's generally going to get you more of an audience faster. You want to be sharing content that is related to that category, and then somehow you want to be capturing an email, and then you can add them to a newsletter. Do I have any questions in the chat or the meetup? I was going to jump in and actually talk through some examples of some web strategy. So often people come up to me and they're like, okay, I want a website. But often the strategy for digital is particularly around starting with a goal rather than a website. A website is good, it contains your business information, everyone should have one, but often a website in and of itself is actually not going to achieve your business goals. A lot of your business goals are going to come down to your digital strategy, where your website is one piece of that puzzle. So I'm going to run through a few examples and some example digital strategies around how I would approach setting up that kind of digital strategy for each of these businesses. So the first one is going to be an event ticketing business, then a consulting company, and then finally a law firm. Each one of these has a different goal, for their business, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the different kind of tools that I'd be using to set these up. Most of these strategies I've created with it in mind that you can do this within a few hours, probably a night. So if you're sitting in bed, you're getting a bit bored, you want to test out a bit of a business idea, these are generally quick ways to get started and have something set up within a few hours. So you're an event management company and you want to be running some events. You may have two goals in mind. One of those goals is probably selling tickets to upcoming events, and the second one is probably getting more clients for your event management business. Now these are two very different customer sets, and because of that I've actually designed two different strategies for each type. Now usually what you'll find, if you're running an event and you're trying to sell tickets, that organic and that longer term SEO strategy won't really work for those one-off events. To really nail a one-off event and selling tickets to them, you probably want a targeted ad campaign for a limited period of time in the lead up to that event. Now often, you don't actually need a website to sell these tickets either. You can get started in a very easy way by using something like TryBooking, Eventbrite, ApointB. There's a lot of booking platforms out there that will do ticket sales for you. And what you probably want to do is set up an ad campaign specific for that event and then run those ads which link back to your website. Now if people are landing on your website and they're not, or your booking page, and they're not making the booking, often what you can do is you can embed some retargeting options so that when they go back to Facebook or to another site on Google, you can actually continue to show them your ad, and that's called retargeting. A more long-term approach, if you want to start building an audience, is probably start building an email list and going back to that social approach of building up some off-brand social channels. So if you're a event management company for, say, startups, you may have a startup Facebook page that people join, they communicate, you have important information about startups in there, and then whenever you get a startup event, you actually go and you post it in there. Now as you're building up your email list as well, you might have an email list of people that are interested in particular kind of events, and you can target them and tell them, hey, here are my upcoming events. As you build that email list, this is why it's a long-term solution, because it takes a while before you start getting a lot of emails and they start converting. If you want to keep your email list really nice, what you want to be doing is making sure that your emails are separated by the kind of things that you're going to be emailing them. If someone signed up to one of your pages and they're interested in some kind of non-startup event, you don't want to go and be sending them startup event emails. That's the fastest way to get someone to unsubscribe. So you may be setting up a few different email campaigns. Now, for getting clients is very different to selling event tickets. A lot of people will be searching for, how do I do event management? How do I find event managers? And they're the kind of things, particularly for the long-term strategy, that you want to be writing content about and engaging people. Maybe you have a Facebook page which is, okay, how do I set up events? And people come to that to look for information, and you engage them through that. If you want a bit of a quicker turnaround, what you can do is, again, you can run some ads, a landing page that maybe collects an email address or a phone number where you can contact people. Some of the landing page platforms like lead pages will allow you to already track the conversions. So with event management, for ads, I'm generally looking at Google, Facebook, and if it's a more businessy event, I'm probably looking at LinkedIn. LinkedIn has an in-mail tool where you can actually send people, depending on their job title, their position, and how long they've been in an industry. You can actually email them and say, hey, would you be interested in coming to this event? You can actually go and collect details within that in-mail as well. When you're looking to sell tickets, you don't always need your own website. You can use something like TryBooking or Eventbrite to actually sell the tickets for you. In this way, you can actually get set up really quickly. Within probably a couple of hours, you can be online running ads and selling tickets. And then retargeting. So platforms like Google and Facebook will allow you, if someone comes to your web page and they don't make a purchase, to actually show them your ad again at a later stage. They've already shown some kind of interest in your product or whatever you're selling, and you might want to show them your ad later. Typically, you want to show people an ad up to about 5 times, particularly if it's something that they're interested in, because the chances that they convert don't actually drop off until around after the 5th or 6th time that they see your ad. For getting clients for your event management, so this isn't selling tickets exactly, this is more that long-term strategy. It could be that you create an ebook. Ebooks are quite popular. A lot of people are looking for guides on how to get set up for their event, and providing a little bit of information is enough for them to actually reach out to you at some point and say, hey, you wrote a really good resource about this, but I'm looking for some external help. Landing pages, I've given a few examples here. Lead pages and MailChimp are probably my go-to for a quick landing page. Now both of these companies have templates where they're set up and they're optimized already for converting people. You probably also want to build up your outbound, so you want to build up some kind of audience. And this is probably through social, through collecting emails and writing newsletters. A second example is a consulting company. So a consulting company is usually looking for a different kind of customer. Often they're looking to take an inquiry. This may mean a booking. It could be paid, it could be free, depending on what they want to do. So for now we're focusing on inbound consultation bookings. So if I was setting this up, a lot of the time you can use a few booking platforms. There's Bookly, ApointB. There's a few booking pages out there which actually will take bookings for you. You can set those up. You can run ads with your booking page, so people are interested in an event, they land through on your booking page. Again, this doesn't require your own website. You can use your own website where you have a page specifically for each service that they land on. But if you want to get started really quickly, you can actually use pre-existing services. If you're building up your email list, you can then be sending out people weekly updates about how they can optimize for their business, and within that you can contain some kind of action where if they need any help, they can reach out to you. If you are doing your own web page and you are getting set up, say on WordPress or some other platform, what I'd suggest is for each different service you offer, set up a different page with a different booking form. Because the customers that come through and the customers that are searching for you in Google, really your pages are going to rank if they're more related to your customer query. And your customer queries are usually going to be quite related to one of your services rather than all of them. It's very rare that people go into Google and say, hey, I want a website agency and a digital marketing agency and a digital strategy agency in one search query. Most often they're searching for one particular service in that search query, and you want to have a page that addresses that exactly. So one of the other things is local businesses. So for instance, if you're a local law firm, what you're actually looking for is you're looking for customers which are in that local area. And the best strategy for local service offerings is actually a very tailored approach to people who are within your postcode area or the surrounding suburbs. Now a lot of this comes down to optimizing on maps. So you can go and set up something called Google My Business. You can add that, and you've probably noticed now that when you Google any local services business, the first thing to come up after the paid ads is actually a map. So if you're looking to rank organically for your local law firm, you have a better chance of ranking higher on the page if you're setting up these local services options. Keeping up to date with all the Google changes and keeping your Google My Business up to date and in line with your website detail will ensure that you keep ranking to the best of your page's ability. Again, for each page that I'm creating, I would generally, for each service that I'm offering, I'd create a separate page. I'd make those pages specific to certain areas. When you're setting up your ads, say you want to set up a local business ad for family law, what you can actually do within those advertising platforms is set it up so that people are going through based on postcodes, based on areas. You can actually choose a demographic within these advertising platforms that allows you to say if people are coming in from, say, Cronulla, then what's going to happen is we can show them an ad for that suburb specifically. Now, the things I really want to hone in on just before I finish off is that if you are blogging, right, sorry, if you're not blogging, it means people will only be finding you when they're searching your brand, and that's not how you're getting new customers. So what you really want to be doing when you're thinking about your website and your digital strategy is, who are my customers and what are they looking for most of the time? What kind of media are they consuming and on what platforms are they consuming it? And you want to make sure that the content that you're putting out there is meeting those search criteria and is on the platforms where your customers actually are. Really, that's all I had for today. If there's any questions on the Hangouts or on the YouTube, feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, thank you for your time. If you have any questions, you can always email me. We will be doing more of these events. Every event that we do will be streamed, whether they're in person, whether they're just online. So make sure you subscribe to our page and you'll see, and click on the notifications icon, the little bell, so that you can see our upcoming events. Our next event is probably going to be a bit more around digital strategy and how do you get your first few customers for your new business. So I'm happy to wait around for a couple of minutes, and if anyone has any questions, now's the time to ask. No worries, Chris. I hope you enjoyed it. Well, if there's nothing further, thank you all for joining, and I hope to hear from you next time.